Talk over drink.
Talks over drinks.
All right.
Yep.
Well, welcome to another episode of Talks Over Drinks. My name is Corey Fauconier, and as always, my partner in justice to God, Markel Prines. Markel, how are you this evening, sir?
I'm doing awesome, brother. I'm excited to be here. Excited to have our awesome guest on tonight. I know he's going to have some great information for us, so definitely looking forward to hearing it.
I got you. Food for action this evening, sir?
Okay, so this food for action, I was thinking about this earlier. It came to mind, and it goes like this. The circle is perfect. It's the tire that gets flat.
I saw that on social media today. Thank you very much for
Yeah.
that.
Okay, so just to give a little insight into the picture that you saw, if no one else saw the picture, it was a picture of a tire, and there was people. The rubber part of the tire made up people. So the concept is, of course, the circle has been around forever. So the circle is eternal. The circle is perfect the way it is. But it's usually just like in life, no matter what system or whatever's in place, the system is what it's going to be. But it's usually the people that go flat. It's the mechanisms or the cogs in the system that fall short that causes the problem. So in this case, it's the people.
I understand. Well, we appreciate that. And then as always, my brother of another color, Jeff Kleb in Charlottesville. How are you this evening, sir?
All right. Waiting to move into our house. We closed on Wednesday, but we can't move until we get our furniture and our appliances delivered. So I went over there today and watered the dirt, but it's very dry soil. But I'm glad we have the most high energy presidential candidate I've ever heard of on the show tonight, Chase Oliver, and that's an honor. And I want to start off with a quote from George Washington. Government is not eloquence, it is force. Like fire, it can be both a dangerous servant and a fearful master. And I'd like to say hello to everybody tonight, including our guest.
All right. And last but not least, my libertarian brother from the Shenandoah Valley, Joshua Huffman. Joshua, how are you this evening, sir?
Well, getting over COVID, but hoping to be 100% here shortly. But great to be with you this evening. Great to see Mr. Oliver again.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we at Talks Over Drinks, not only have we added new guests, but we have stepped up our game for 2024. So we have had Mike Termott, the Libertarian vice presidential candidate, on with us twice. So this evening, we are glad and overjoyed to welcome the Libertarian candidate for president of the United States, Mr. Chase Oliver. Chase Oliver, how are you today, sir?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for having me. Great to be part of the show. And, just a few days out, drinks with friends is kind of what you need when you're trying to finish out this election season. There's a lot of stress in the world, a lot of crazy things going on. And so it's good to be able to have just a nice conversation with some folks. So thanks for having me.
Well, we appreciate you. And like I said, you're always welcome. So the first question I have for you is, how do you feel going into the last couple days? And have you been able to touch all 50 states in our country?
So I have campaigned in all 50 states. I actually did that before I earned my party's nomination. Since nomination, I would have liked to have hit all 50 again, but the window is quite a bit shorter than in the pre-nomination time. So I've hit a lot of states, haven't hit all 50 again. But, these last few days here, it's a combination of excitement, exhaustion, seeing like your work coming to fruition. It simultaneously took way too long to get here and got here all of a sudden, all of that stuff. Like it's a kind of a combination of feeling. But the best thing I can say is I feel really gratified that I've had an amazing team with me throughout the whole process. It wasn't just me, it's a whole team of people that makes this presidential campaign happen. And so I'm happy to see us nearing the end of the finish line for this election. And the sky's the limit for what we can do after the election. We have lots of different ideas of what we might be able to do after the election, win, lose, or draw.
Okay. Markel, you have a question for Chase?
Awesome. So you just touched on what was going to be one of my main questions, which is, what do you see for after this election? I believe we've had previous conversations, me and Corey, about what happens to a candidate when the election is over and they may have been a great potential candidate. Maybe they might not win the election, but we often look at those people that are great candidates and we might want to actually win. But after the elections, whether it's presidential or local elections, those people often disappear. So I guess my question is a two-part question. What do you see yourself doing and continuing on? How do you see yourself continuing on after the election? And how do you, or how do a person who's put up on the pedestal or put up as a representative of a party, how do they maintain that momentum after the election so that hopefully next election cycle you can come back? Or is it just a one-time thing for most people? Or do you say, hey, next cycle, I should be the number one person because I was the number one person the last time? So how do you see those two things?
Yeah. So post-election, assuming I don't win the election, which polls are to be believed, I'm not going to, right? What do you do after that? So I'm going to get busy getting back into what I did before I was a professional candidate, which is being an activist. I'm going to find areas in the activist space that I can help bring out more voices to, bring more attention to, and use whatever attention I can garner as a former presidential candidate to reactivate myself in the activism space. I imagine I'm going to develop, we're still in the works of what it's going to look like exactly, what the structure, whether it's a C, 501c or a PAC or something like that. But we're going to be forming some sort of organizational structure that allows us to continue to promoting activism across the political spectrum, not just only libertarian activism, but really good anti-authoritarian, pro-liberty activism across the spectrum. And then as far as our party, I'm going to commit myself. I'm a lifetime member of the Libertarian Party. As somebody who's now would be a former presidential candidate, it's my job to try to help make sure that our party grows moving forward, finding the most professional people to put into leadership positions, helping to cultivate a growth model. So we're increasing donors, increasing members, and I'm going to do whatever work I can to facilitate that for the party, because I do think, whether it's me or somebody else running in 2028, and I'm not ruling that out, honestly. The only thing I'm definitely certain of is I'm going to get a good nap in after this election. So I don't know exactly, if I'm going to run in 4 years or whatever. And I'm also only 39. I could run in 4 years, 8 years, 12 years, and still be younger than all the other competitors that I'm running against right now. So, there's a long future ahead of me, but I want to make sure that the Libertarian Party is there for that future, that we're building that party up and making sure more and more people are able to run as a libertarian. Well, again, getting myself back in that activism space, which was where I got started in politics. And I've been dying to get back out in the streets, kind of doing that on the street level organizing. So that's probably where my path is going to be taking me after November, is both activism in the streets and helping to professionalize the Libertarian Party and bring leadership in that's going to help us be stronger in 2028. Those are my two goals post-election.
All right, Jeff, you have a question for Chase?
Yeah, I was just curious. Of the three, which do you think is the most important? Ranked choice voting, easier ballot access, or inclusion in the debates along with the major party candidates?
Well, certainly at the presidential level, I think it would be inclusion in the debates. I think if I were on the debate stage with Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, this would be a completely different election we'd be talking about. We'd have a lot more attention, a lot more media, a lot more exposure. And I certainly know I could have handled myself on a debate stage with those two. I've been on debate stages with much tougher debate opponents. And so of those, I would say clearly, I think the debate inclusion would be the most important because the amount of media attention would give you. Now, beyond that, between the remaining two, it's kind of a toss-up because it's like, can you get on the ballot or can you overcome the spoiler effect? In Georgia, I think ballot access is more important because it's so hard for us to run in my home state for like state legislature or for Congress or the state house that we don't do it. We only run statewide candidates because that's the ballot access we have. And then we had ballot access up and down the ballot. We would be running dozens of candidates a year. I would not be the only libertarian on the ballot in Georgia if we had ballot access for legislature races. And so to me, that's a huge component. And of course, they're all important. I'm a ranked choice voting advocate too, but of those three, clearly the biggest game changer, I think, would be debate inclusion, because that's what allowed Ross Perot to get 19% in 1992. He was at 7% when the debates happened. He shot up to 19%. Imagine what we could do if we had a libertarian on stage. Like, just imagine what a Mike Termott debating J.D. Vance and Tim Walz would look like. Imagine what me on stage next to either Joe Biden or Kamala Harris up against Donald Trump. It'd have been a whole different candidate, a game changer, baby. And I would have loved it. And I fought for it, but we're going to have to continue to fight in the future to grow our party before debate conclusion becomes undeniable.
Josh, a question for Chase?
Yes. Well, this is actually something that came out a result of a conversation I had earlier today. I find it frustrating. I've been involved in politics since I was 15 years old. So back in 1995. So it's been a while now. I'm seeing a trend that I've seen pretty much every election cycle where there's a libertarian candidate, in that there are a number of sort of people who call themselves libertarians, sort of faux libertarians, who have come out right before the election, and they typically say, oh, well, the true libertarian candidate is the Republican candidate. So in this case, they're saying, Donald Trump is the most libertarian of the candidates. And of course, I find that quite dishonest and rather frustrating. But how would you answer people who would say that sort of thing?
Just to me, it's as silly as anybody who would vote, who would have voted for a Democratic candidate as opposed to libertarian. Like, both of the Democrat and Republicans are quite unlibertarian. And if you want to grow the libertarian philosophy, grow the libertarian message, grow our name ID, why are we glomming ourselves onto a presidential candidate who, let's break it best, has maybe done one or two libertarian things during his first 4 years in office, and the rest of the time it was exploding the debt and deficit, expanding the drone warfare without reporting civilian casualties. He's a guy who, gave the governors the authority to lock down our states. He's the guy who believed every single thing coming out of the public health sphere around COVID and backed it up. He's the guy who was responsible for many of those things, and yet it seems like people have amnesia. The biggest thing to me is now people saying, oh, well, he said Elon's going to be put in charge of the Department of Government Efficiency, and then Ron Paul's going to advise him. First off, none of that's concrete. All of that's just kind of things that have been said online and in the Twitter sphere. No, Donald Trump has not once said, Ron Paul will work in my administration, right? That's just not happened. And then the idea that Elon's going to clean up the department, or that he's going to clean up government inefficiency by creating another government department, the Government Department of Inefficiency. That's like laughably ironic. That's not how you do it. It just, to me, seems it's a lot of silly kind of fantastical thinking of, oh, well, if Donald Trump gets in, we're going to cut the workforce down by 80%. Well, taxes will be cut. It'll be a libertarian utopia. That's just not how it's going to happen. I mean, look no further than the fact that he's got RFK and his transition team who's talking about, we're going to ban pharmaceutical commercials. We're going to ban this in the food. We're going to ban that in the food. It's like, that's pretty heavy-handed authoritarianism. And so I see the poll every 4 years, right? Most important election of our lifetime. We can't abandon voting for the Republican because if the Democrat gets in, we'll have communism in 4 years. Well, that's what they said under Obama both times. That's what they said under Joe Biden. That's what they're saying now. Oh, if Kamala gets in, we'll be Stalin in 4 years. We will not be Stalin in 4 years any more than we'll be Mussolini in 4 years if Trump wins. Like, this is overblown hype by both parties to scare you, to make you afraid. Because when you're afraid, you don't think rationally. And that's what's happening here. People get afraid of Kamala Harris and they don't think rationally. They think, oh, I got to vote for Trump, or vice versa. That's just complete hooey. Vote for who you think is the best. Vote for who you think has the best ideas and help that person get more votes. That should be your mindset, not selling out to one wing of the duopoly or the other. I think that's frankly what I think it is. And to me, it's unhealthy for our party. And I think that's part of the reason why we need to professionalize and rebuild after this election.
Chase, tell me, I'm not familiar with Georgia, so tell us a little bit about the battle you and the libertarians in the state of Georgia have with ballot access.
Yeah, so Georgia is one of the toughest states in the country for ballot access. When it comes to, getting the number of signatures, on the ballot for each race, it's very, very difficult for people to overcome the signature ballot threshold. So much so that this was developed in the 40s to prevent communists from getting on the ballot, and like mission accomplished. A communist has never run on the ballot in Georgia, but neither has any other candidate outside of the two-party system for Congress. We don't have independents running for Congress. We don't have Green Party or Libertarian Party or Constitution Party, because they have made the signature requirements extremely high to where it's very costly and time consuming and frankly nearly impossible if you're running for like state senate.
What's y'all signature requirement in Georgia?
I don't know the exact number for every race, but I know that to run for Congress, so just to run like federally for Congress, it's something like near 25,000 signatures, which means you really need like 35,000 to cover the ones that will get left out. So it's like the worst. When I say it's the worst in the country, I'm not even joking. I've gotten to run for Congress, and that was only because it was a special election that it didn't require signatures, right?
Okay.
The other thing is in this election in 2024, the only race that's on the ballot for Libertarians is president and vice president. The only race. And in Georgia, if we don't hit the numbers we hit, we lose our statewide ballot access, which means we have to go through a whole statewide signature gathering process, which will be very costly and very time consuming. Now, I will say this is a tough election year, and this is a swing state. So getting those votes is going to be very difficult. And if I don't get them, it's me my personal mission to get out with the Libertarian Party of Georgia and to earn ballot access again. Because, I take it on my own shoulders that if we lose it, that's something I'm going to have to carry with me, along with every member of the Libertarian Party of Georgia who wants to continue to see ballot access. And so I'm hoping to earn the votes I need. I'm hoping those who are in the party here have helped us and take it seriously to try to spread the message. I know there are some great folks like Mark Mosley, who's a fantastic supporter. He's on his own done independent mailings that I know of that I hit my mailbox. That's how I know. And for me, good on him, because we need to hit those numbers in Georgia. We really do. Otherwise, it's going to take a lot of work.
And one last question from me. What is the percentage you guys need to garner in Georgia to hold on to the ballot access?
I think it's just around 1%. It's like 1%, I think, is the number that we need. I could be wrong. I know there's different numbers across the country. I know it's like 3% in Ohio, 2% in Minnesota, 2% in Iowa. I think Georgia is one of the 1% states, if I can remember correctly. But I'll be honest, there's 50 states, and I'm trying to remember each one of them. And but I'm pretty sure Georgia's a 1% state.
1%. Okay, Markel, you have a question for Chase?
Okay, so last question for me. Day after election, once again, based off of your experience and your understanding of the two candidates, how do you see the day after election looking in this country? What do you see major changes occurring based off of each candidate's political position?
Oh, yeah. Well, if you're looking at polling right now, and a bunch of recent polls just dropped that shows actually a pretty big swing for Kamala Harris, even in a state like Iowa, which Biden lost and Obama lost, or Clinton lost, but it actually shows that she's up 3 points in Iowa. So it looks like right now there's a big polling swing in favor of Harris. If the polls hold true, she's going to win on election night. It also looks like there's a good chance you have a Republican Senate, and maybe the Republicans still holding the House. So that's a little bit more up in the air. If that happens, we have a divided government the day after election day going into the next term. We have a Republican Senate and a Democratic president. What you're going to see is Republicans all of a sudden remember that spending is bad. Spending is not good. And you're going to have a Democrat who's going to have to deal with that. And I think that's actually the best case scenario for libertarians is divided government. Because if you had both houses of Congress being Republican and a Republican president, boy, Donald Trump's going to do a lot of things that libertarians aren't going to be cool with. And the same as if you had Kamala Harris in a Democratic House and a Democratic Senate, a lot of things would get passed that we would be really upset about. But when there's that divided government, less things happen and less things change. And honestly, that is better than expansion of government. That's better than growth of government. Is actually not a whole lot changing. And so I anticipate that's what happens is you're gonna have a Republican Senate and a Democratic president elect. Now, the one thing that I will say that I'm hoping my prediction is wrong, but I do predict that if Kamala Harris wins or Donald Trump wins, regardless, you're going to see one faction or the other of the opposition getting out in the streets and protesting and possibly being violent. And I hope that I'm wrong there. I hope that I'm totally wrong and cooler heads prevail and say, people say, hey, they won. It's done. Let's get past this. But I fear, unfortunately, that we're going to see possible demonstrations and violence in the street. I don't fear demonstrations. Use your voice, protest, but don't get violent with it. That's all I'm hoping is that we see out of it.
Yeah. Jeff, you have an additional question, sir?
Mr. Oliver, do you think that we should be a little bit suspicious when some of the people come out in Georgia and Pennsylvania and Arizona and say that they won't know the results for as much as 3 or 4 days? And do you think that's going to be the case, or do you think we're actually going to know by midnight Tuesday night who wins?
I don't know if we'll know by midnight Tuesday night. Like, I think honestly, just because we're going to see huge record turnout, just the time to add and counting all those votes. I bet we know by probably the end of November the 6th, especially if these polls are correct, because it seems like it'll break a little bit easier. But it really just depends on how competitive the state is. I mean, if we're talking differences between a couple of thousand votes, they're going to want to count and recount. I don't find it super suspicious considering the volume of votes. What I do want to see is going forward, I want to see more auditable methods to check voting. I think voting on the blockchain is something we need to be looking at for the future elections. So there's more transparency. But no, I don't think there's going to be enough shenanigans to change it one way or the other. I just think it's going to be super, super close. And I think it's going to, honestly, my other prediction, it's going to come down to Pennsylvania and North Carolina. Those will be the two that are the latest getting in. Pennsylvania, just because historically they always have taken a few days to get things counted. That's just the way it is, whether the state goes red or blue. It's always taken a little bit of time. And North Carolina, I think you're going to see infrastructure and difficulties with getting voting out in Western North Carolina, where there's been so much storm damage.
That's true.
Right.
And so I think that's where you're going to see definite, maybe a delay in results is coming out of like the big blue area of Asheville, as well as all those red pockets that surround the Asheville area that are traditional Republican bases. And so let's see what turnout's like in Western North Carolina and what the vote is impacted like there as compared to say 2020 or 2016. That's going to be where I think, as like if you're a person who loves statistics, I think that might be the difference maker in this election is turnout in Western North Carolina and seeing how that is affected by the storms.
Wow. Joshua, you have another question for Chase?
Well, I can't. I mean, I think he's done a pretty good job going through some issues. I really, and I don't want to delve into this too deeply. I really wish that the National Libertarian Party did more to advocate for your candidacy, because I have to say, I've been voting Libertarian for president since I met Gary Johnson, the first time he ran, and I think you're as good a candidate as any that I've seen so far, and I'm just disappointed that there are some people within the National Libertarian Party that have other priorities, I'm afraid.
Yeah, well, there are two things there. Yeah, there's been some definite hostile leadership that have thought that it's more valuable to kind of try to go towards Trump and those kinds of things. And I think, honestly, if that's how you feel on leadership of the Libertarian Party, you should resign from your leadership in the Libertarian Party. Like, you have a fiduciary duty to support candidates. That's kind of what you should be doing. But beyond that, this is why I talk about us having to fix our party and repair our party, because frankly, even if the Libertarian Party had wanted to wholeheartedly support me, the leadership hadn't been kind of in the way of that. There's only so much they could have done, because we've had 2 years of, downward trend in donors and membership because of the last LNC, and we haven't recovered from that. And we need to put people in charge. And again, this is something I'm going to be committing to after this election, to putting people in charge who have a history of working within a business, a nonprofit, a political entity that has gone from that has gone from low to high, that shows growth. I want to see that example. And so that's what I'm going to be looking for to kind of lead our party going forward, because you're right. It's unfortunate. And I don't want this to ever be the case for any Libertarian candidate going forward, that leadership is either unable or unwilling to support the party's elected nominees. And to me, again, I'm going to keep fighting as a happy warrior. I'm going to keep campaigning as hard as I can regardless. I'm going to keep doing everything I can regardless. And I have through this election. We're leaving nothing on the table, nothing on the field, whatever metaphor you want to use. But I'm pushing through, and I'm going to push through after November to try to help be a guiding force and a positive force for the Libertarian Party. So, regardless of what the votes look like on Tuesday, I feel good knowing that I did the best I could to spread the message of liberty. And I hope my volunteers, my staff, and other people, regardless of whatever the numbers look like, good, bad, or indifferent on Tuesday or Wednesday, whenever we figure out the whole final total of this whole thing, I want them to know that I fought the good fight, and that I would do it all over again in the heartbeat, because this was the honor of my life to represent the principles of liberty in the Libertarian Party on the national stage.
Wow. what originally brought you to the Libertarian Party, Chase? What happened in life for you? What did you read? And what epiphany did you have to decide that this was going to be your new home and this was what was worth fighting for?
I'm glad you asked. I was an anti-war activist, but even before I was a libertarian. What got me involved as an activist in the streets is being anti-war, opposing the war on terror, the war in Afghanistan, the war in Iraq. And I thought at the time, because Bush was the Republican, I didn't know about the third parties really. Well, I guess I'm a Democrat. And so I flowed with the Democrats for a while. And I even helped a Democrat win the nomination so he could win the presidency. That was Barack Obama in 2008, because he made a lot of anti-war promises. He said he was going to end the drones. He was going to close Gitmo. I don't know if people remember. In 2008, he said, I will meet with any world leader without precondition because I think it's important to be diplomatic. And then he didn't do any of that. We helped him get elected, and he didn't do any of it. And so that made me really upset. And it kind of drove me out of the Democratic Party, two-party politics. I said, you know what? I'm an independent now, whatever. And in 2010, I just happened to be at the Atlanta Pride Festival in Piedmont Park in Atlanta. And there was the Libertarian Party of Georgia. They had a tent, and their candidate for governor waved me over. And after talking for a minute, he said, well, what's the most important thing to you politically? And I said, I'm, anti-war. I oppose the war with every fiber of my being. And he said, welcome home. This is where you belong. You need to be here. Let me tell you about the Libertarian Party. Let me tell you about non-aggression. And that was the first time I met libertarians, interacted with them, and I felt welcomed. I felt like I could grow in the movement. And so that was my first vote for a libertarian was in 2010. My first libertarian vote for president was just like you, sir, Gary Johnson, 2012. You mentioned that earlier. Awesome. Johnson Gray, great ticket. And then in 2014, I was a full-fledged party member. So it was really being anti-war, seeing the two-party system let me down, and seeing the Libertarian Party embrace me that brought me to the movement.
Wow. Well, I will tell you my story. I met Rob Sarvis and James Carr when they ran for governor and Congress in, I think, 15 or 16. And one of my sons was with me. He was like, well, Mr. Sarvis won the forum. And I went and I joined the party after that, and it's been home for me. I have family. I consider Josh and Jeff my brothers. When I ran for state senate in 2017, Markel helped me get signatures. So I agree with you, Chase. I definitely embrace all the things that you said. If you guys ever need help in Georgia, you definitely let us know. And any candidate that you ever speak with, you guys are always welcome here on Talks Over Drinks. Gentlemen, any of the three of you have any other additional questions for Chase?
I'm good. I know he said he had to get going to something else.
Yeah,
I'm going to drop
I
some
appreciate
literature,
him
y'all.
coming by.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Jeff. Yeah, I'm going to go drop some literature off. So it is Saturday night here in Atlanta, but the campaigning doesn't stop.
That's
and
right.
so you might notice I'm wearing my We the People Means Everyone hoodie, with the rainbow stripe right there. I'm the first LGBTQ candidate for president. And so we're going to make sure that we're tonight, Saturday night before election night, we're hitting the gay bars. We're making sure everybody knows in Atlanta.
Hey, and
There's
Chase,
an
we loved
LGBTQ
you.
candidate for president.
We loved you in the free and equal debates. You popped some smoke big time.
Yeah,
Hey man, I loved it too. It was a great time. I did all three of them, so check out any of those. But yeah, that was a great time in my life. Well, as we kind of get towards the end of this, I just want to say thank you guys for giving me some time. I imagine I'll be back. This ain't gonna be the last time because, like I said, I got something in the works for after the election. We might want to talk about going on in the future. But thank you so much for an opportunity to speak to you and your audience today. And if you haven't visited my website, go to votechaseoliver.com. And if you haven't voted yet, get out and vote Libertarian.
that's right. Well, again, Chase, we appreciate you coming by. We will stick in touch with you and your team. Again, my name is Corey Fauconier. As always, my partner in justice, the guy Markel Prines, my brother of another color, Jess Kleb, and my libertarian brother in the Shenandoah Valley, Joshua Huffman, and our guest, Chase Oliver. We are Talks Over Drinks. Remember, it is never too early or too late for Talks Over Drinks. Cheers, everybody.
All right, let's talk over drinks.
Talks over drinks.